Today on Steve's Garage, I'll be replacing the connectors that go between your wiring harness or ignition wires and your coil packs. These are specifically the coil pack connectors on a 2000 Volvo V70 XC, and the part numbers I'll be using today are 9494800. This part number is used on a variety of Volvos, but many cars with a coil unplug ignition system use this style plug to go from your wiring harness to your coil pack. Even if yours doesn't look exactly the same, this video will serve as a guide for you to replace yours if they're broken. As far as tools, I needed to remove the engine cover, my 5 new connectors, and a depinning or terminal toolkit. For my connectors, I used this small double-ended tool, though yours may be different. You definitely don't need this whole kit, especially if you're not doing work like this often. I bought this set because I got tired of using these. You can pick a set up pretty cheap, and they have a ton of different tools, but they also bend really easy. I've used the cheap ones enough to know that for this job, I wanted to upgrade. If you're looking for a set for this job or maybe something else, head down to the description. I've got a couple links for cheaper and more expensive sets. Now let's get to work. Remove any covers or anything in your way to access the coil packs and the wiring. You want to make this job as easy as possible for yourself, and you definitely don't want to damage any wiring. I'm starting with this one on the end because it's easiest to film, even though it isn't actually broken. I have a few others that broke when I released them, and if that happens, there's nothing locking the connector to the coil pack, which can obviously be a problem. You'll see small numbers on top of the coil pack which correspond with the plug itself. 4, 3, 2, 1. So we've got a red wire in 4, black in 3, and yellow and black in 1. Grab your terminal tool, and you'll see why I wanted a nicer one for this. Slide it into the plug to release the tabs on the terminals, and the wire should pull right out of the back. It should come out pretty easy, so if you're getting some resistance, make sure the terminal tabs are actually released. If you yank the wire out of the back of the connector, you could damage the terminal or the wiring itself. You could put a new terminal on the end of the wire if you damage it, but why make more work for yourself? Since we know where the wiring goes, I would suggest releasing all 3 at the same time and slide the plug evenly off the wiring. Doing one at a time and bending it out of the way isn't a great idea, especially on older cars where things tend to get a little brittle. It's always a good idea to compare your old parts and your new parts, and in this case you'll see that there's actually a small plug for the unused port. I'll be removing that with a small pick tool or screwdriver and then installing it onto my new plug. When it's time to install the terminal ends back into the connector, make sure you've got the correct orientation. In this case, the small release tabs go on top and bottom, and the end of the terminal has a small split where it meets the coil pack. Just like I mentioned earlier, you should put the connector back on all 3 at the same time. It avoids any undue stress on the wiring. The terminals should click into place and not easily pull out of the back of the plug. That's how you know they're seated correctly. Now you can plug that one back in and move on to the rest. If you have one broken connector, you might as well go in and replace them all, especially on an older car. That brittle plastic is not going to last. If you broke one, the rest aren't far behind. There's no sense in taking a chance with ignition issues or going back and replacing them one by one as they continue to break. Overall, this is a pretty simple process, especially when it concerns your ignition system, which is going to keep your car running properly. I made it out without damaging any of the wiring. I'll take that as a win in and of itself. With the right tools and a little bit of patience, it should be smooth sailing. If this video helped you fix something other than a Volvo, please leave a comment. I would love to know who's watching. If you have any questions or comments, leave those below. I try to help everybody out. If you found this video helpful, think about subscribing so you don't miss future DIYs. Thanks so much for watching.